On this week's Vaticano, we follow the events of this month's cardinal-making consistory, in which 2 Americans and 1 Canadian received the so-called Red Hat. The announcement is also made that 7 new saints, including 2 Americans, will be canonised next October. It's a day of festivity in Rome. Bishops of the African and European continents unite to speak of mutual engagement for evangelisation, and the Pope speaks of praying for those who cause us pain. All this coming up on Vaticano. Here at St. Peter's Basilica on February the 18th, Pope Benedict XVI created new cardinals and announced the future canonisation of 7 saints.
Quem ego vivo, aut baptismum quo ego baptisor baptisari.
Through the ceremony, called a consistory, 21 men became cardinals. There was a 22nd who was unable to attend for health reasons. It was a moment for those present to meditate on their future service to the Church.
In carrying out their particular service in support of the Petrine ministry, the new cardinals will be called to consider and evaluate the events, the problems, and the pastoral criteria which concern the mission of the entire Church. In this delicate task, the life and the death of the Prince of the Apostles, who for love of Christ gave himself even unto the ultimate sacrifice, will be an example and a helpful witness of faith for the new cardinals. It is with this meaning that the placing of the red biretta is also to be understood. The new cardinals are entrusted with the service of love for God, love for his Church, an absolute and unconditional love for his brothers and sisters, even unto shedding their blood, if necessary, as expressed in the words of placing the biretta, and as indicated by the color of their robes. Furthermore, they are asked to serve the Church with love and vigor, with the transparency and wisdom of teachers, with the energy and strength of shepherds, with the fidelity and courage of martyrs. They are to be eminent servants of the Church that finds in Peter the visible foundation of unity.
Some were solemn as they received the cardinal's ring and red hat called a biretta, while others did so with obvious gusto. Americans Timothy Dolan and Edwin O'Brien were among them, as was the Canadian Thomas Collins. The atmosphere was a joyful one, in the presence of thousands of clergy, religious and lay pilgrims and official delegations. Adding to the excitement was the announcement of the Church's 7 newest saints, including 2 more Americans.
Therefore, by the authority of Almighty God, the Apostles Peter and Paul, and our own, we decree that Blessed Jacques Berthoud, Pedro Calingzad, Giovanni Battista Piamarta, Maria del Monte Carmelo Sayez y Berengueras, Marianne Cope, Kateri Tekawitha, and Anna Schaefer are to be enrolled among the saints on the 21st day of the month of October in the year 2012.
With the addition of the Church's newest cardinals, there are now 213 of them in the world. 125 of those are under the age of 80, thus making them eligible to vote in the case of a future conclave. These men are the Pope's closest collaborators. Festivities continued throughout the day following the cardinal-making consistory. Here at Rome's Pontifical North American College, pilgrims came by the busload in support of a pair of New Yorkers. New York-born Cardinal Edwin F. O'Brien was a military chaplain during the Vietnam War. He later served as the head of the Archdiocese for Military Services and more recently as the Archbishop of Baltimore. With his 2011 appointment as the Grand Master of the Rome-based Knights of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem came the step up to Cardinal. The Cardinal himself looked to the future, open to God's will.
I'll find out how my life will change. I hope I take it a step at a time, a stride at a time, and be open to whatever new challenges face me. I am open to that, I think. I've always been fairly flexible in my ministry, had many different assignments, and the Lord has always shown me the way and supported me each time. And I found that people of great support every step along the way as well. And I expect that will be the case now again. I told the Pope I would hope, with God's grace, to serve him with my whole heart. And I think that's all. I might have said something else, I don't know. But he listened, and he said, "Thank you, pray for me." That's what he said.
It was awesome in the sense that the responsibilities that were being put on his shoulders, I thought, were considerable and will be in the future. But he's the man for the job. He's got the experience, and he was right for it. His former role as Archbishop of the Military Services, I think, provided that experience.
Meanwhile, it was a hug fest for this adopted son of New York and the 1,000 or so pilgrims that came to see him created Cardinal. Cardinal Timothy Dolan was originally ordained for the Archdiocese of St. Louis. He was made Archbishop of Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2002, and after 6 years he was appointed to lead the Archdiocese of New York. In 2010, he was voted in by his brother bishops as the president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. For him, this red hat isn't only his.
This is the hat I want to put on the Empire State Building and the home plate at Yankee Stadium and the Statue of Liberty. So, because it's for all of New York, it's not for me. And actually, one of the more sobering, the gospel and the homily were very sobering. This was an occasion of great joy and honor for me and my family and so many friends. But see, the gospel and his words were very somber because they reminded us, and the gospel is on purpose. They recall the words of Jesus saying, we're not in it for the prestige, we're not in it for the honor, we're not in it for the glory, we're in it to serve. That's what Jesus said. And then, of course, he spoke about, reminded us of the color red being our willingness to even shed our blood in defense of the faith and the church and of human dignity. So that's kind of sombering, but it puts it all in perspective. You know what else put it into perspective? When at the end we got to approve and give the affirmation for the 2 new saints, 2 of whom are New Yorkers. So I thought, you know, as grateful as I am for being a cardinal, I really want to be a saint. And I mean that, and I got a long way to go, believe me. But it's all about holiness, it's all about friendship with Jesus, it's all about being a saint. That's what I want to be. So that one of our first acts as a cardinal is being able to approve 2 new saints. That was a biggie.
He's so energetic and brings such energy to New York that it's contagious. You just like to be around him. And we also think he has a wonderful vision for the church. And in my world, he has a wonderful vision for Catholic schools and how we're going to preserve such a wonderful mission.
The North American College itself had ample reason to celebrate.
Well, it's a great blessing for the church. 2 great men of the church who would serve well whatever they're asked to do. And obviously that's why there's so many people here today, and people are so inspired by these 2 men and encouraged to do the same, you know, to serve Christ and his church as best as we can, especially the young seminarians and priests who are here. So this college was blessed to have both of them have served as rector. And because they're such good men of the church, they were great rectors too. So we're particularly blessed.
And with the day's cardinal creations and the new saints' announcements, the college will now have some updating to do. There is this now archaic dedication of the Chapel of the Good Shepherd to Archbishop Edwin O'Brien to bring up to date. Then there are the depictions of Blesseds Marion Cope and Kateri Takawitha on the Wall of Fame. For Blessed Cope, who joined St. Damien as a missionary to the lepers of the Hawaiian island of Molokai, and Blessed Takawitha, the first Native American to be approved for canonisation, the time has come to become saints. With their canonisations coming up next fall, the celebrations are far from over.
Welcome
back. You're watching Vaticano. On the evening of the Consistory, a rare event took place. The Vatican opened its audience hall and rooms that are otherwise rather off limits to the public. It was a chance for anyone and everyone who came to greet the new cardinals. Here at the Paul VI Audience Hall, the Americans' Cardinals Timothy Dolan and Edwin O'Brien carried on greetings that had begun earlier in the day at the North American College. Another North American was there with some friends.
Well, we have about 200 pilgrims who came from Toronto for this, and it's a tremendous experience of the Universal Church. For me, it's a tremendous honor, obviously, to be called by the Holy Father to be a cardinal, and I hope that I'll be able to faithfully serve the Universal Church in this way, but also it is a way of recognizing the tremendous centrality of the mission of the Holy Father in the life of the whole Church.
Hong Kong, Berlin, Prague and other major cities of the world were represented, as was the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church based in India. Neo-Cardinal George Alan Cherry leads this church, founded by St Thomas in the 1st century. While more than half of the new cardinals were in the audience hall, the others were in different rooms of the Pope's residence, called the Apostolic Palace. Up these stairs from the bronze doors is the beautifully decorated room called the Sala Regia, where more cardinals were available for greetings. Here was the new president of the Vatican city-state, the new head of the Holy See's courts, and the prefect for the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Then there was the Sala Ducale, a true treasure and delight for pilgrims, and the Rome-based cardinals who hosted them, all accessible to the public during this rare Vatican open house. At the February 18th Consistory, Pope Benedict XVI announced the name of Blessed Carmen Sales y Bangueras among the Church's 7 newest saints. She was the Spanish foundress of the Missionary Teaching Sisters of the Immaculate Conception. Blessed Sales lived from 1848 until 1911, but her charism for educating women lives on in every school, in every continent today.
Somos concepcionistas, misioneras de la enseñanza.
We are the Missionary Teaching Sisters of the Immaculate Conception, founded in 1892 by Blessed Carmen Sales, and our charism is teaching. It is a missionary charism of promoting women through education. Carmen Sales understood education as the elevation of the dignity of woman, and she was a pioneer in her times. Her teaching consisted of giving human culture in spiritual formation. As she said, it was balancing mind and heart. Her objective was that the woman would be able to participate in society with dignity, whether in the family, civil society, or, of course, in the church.
Todo ello, y ahí está también la fuerza del carisma.
Here also is the strength of the charism that came from an inspiration. She had known women prostitutes and delinquents. She asked herself what would have been of them had they received an adequate formation. Especially in that moment, the woman had very few possibilities for work in society. So, the inspiration came from looking to the Immaculate Mary, Mary, model of the woman, loved by God from the very beginning. She was inspired to educate from the youngest age possible, to form the hearts of children in a way that, when evil forces might come, their hearts would already be full of good. This immaculate vocation took her into education.
For the Conceptionists, who continue the mission she began, she is ever a model for their work.
That the Church, by way of the authoritative voice of the Pope, confirms her sanctity is like a demand on us. A bishop from Astorga, Spain, who knew her personally, in a letter from him that we still have, said, "Very good and very holy must the Conceptionists be to be worthy of this mother." So then, it's a challenge for us, an aim to try to be close to her.
In prayer and unity, bishops of Africa and Europe joined together in February to strengthen their ties. Shared engagement for evangelisation between the continents was the theme for their 5-day encounter in Rome.
May the peace of the Lord with you all. We give thanks to God Almighty for bringing us together once again in our quest for greater communion and collaboration.
For the individuals involved, it marked another step forward as a universal Church of Rome.
The meeting between the bishops from Africa and the bishops from Europe is important because it seeks to bring together the two churches. The two continents, as Christians, we have quite a lot in common. And therefore, a meeting like this will facilitate a discussion on the various aspects on which we could share. For example, we could share on cultural issues, we could share on the priorities, the concerns of our different Christians or parishes or dioceses or episcopal conferences. So on all those fronts, we actually have something to talk about, to share in order to enhance our work. Besides, both continents belong to the universal church, and it's important to make it a fact and not just something we talk about.
I think the relationship is more to develop an understanding of each other, a mutual understanding of each other, our priorities in making church wherever we are, the difficulties that we experience, and the particular gifts that we bring to the church, both in Europe and in Africa, and therefore by understanding each other and what these gifts are, we can know how better to use them to promote salvation, harmony, coordination, and, as I say, mutual understanding.
The encounter in Rome comes just months after the Pope's visit to Benin, where he called the African continent a place of great hope for the Church. There he exhorted Africans to rise up and be who they are, leaving them with a document called Africae Munos to guide their path.
Africae Munos is a very key document for the future development of the Church in Africa, and has already given that Church in Africa an identity and a purpose and an objective. And it is up to us, while we are here, to become more deeply aware of what the Holy Father has said and how, in practical terms, we might be able to develop his ideas for the benefit of the people of Africa and also for ourselves in Europe. Because by understanding what Africa has to offer, we can welcome that, and by Africa understanding what we may have to offer, I'm sure they will welcome that as well.
The old evangelisation saw Europeans go to Africa as missionaries. Will the new evangelisation see Africans coming to countries like Wales in order to re-evangelise countries that were once Christian, which perhaps have lost the faith to some extent?
I think already in Great Britain, we are receiving priests from overseas, and they are adapting to our culture and our language and our ways of doing things, and we are realizing that they have much to bring in their understanding of Christ, in their understanding of church, the structures of the church, the purpose of the church to bring salvation to everyone. I would not go so far as to say that already we have a reverse missionary process, a reverse evangelization. But the experience is a positive one. On the whole, there will always be, I think, difficulties one way or another with us or with them. But by trying to work together, we will build and rebuild and develop the church in Europe, as I hope we may be involved in helping them still in Africa and elsewhere as missionaries.
This conference, I think, has already started to help in the sense that it is beginning to clarify why the document was issued, what is important about that document, and why in Africa should actually take it as a very serious document. For example, the Holy Father enumerates quite a number of challenges in that document which we have to take. And one that was mentioned today was that theology shouldn't just be some speculative science, but we should try and translate our theology into some pastoral teaching, pastoral care, etc. So I think it is giving us guidelines as to how to confront some of the challenges today.
Africae Munus, as all papal documents, can be found on the Vatican's website. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. The final words of Jesus Christ as he died on the cross should prompt all Christians to pray for those who have hurt them. So said Pope Benedict XVI at his general audience on February the 15th.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Pax vobis. Dear brothers and sisters, in our continuing catechesis on Christian prayer, we turn once more to the prayer of Jesus on the cross. St. Luke relates three last words of the crucified Lord. In his prayer, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Jesus intercedes for his executioners and shows the depths of his reconciling love for sinful humanity. In his words to the good thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise," he offers sure hope to all those who repent and put their trust in him. His final cry, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit," expresses Jesus' trust-filled surrender to God's will, born of that unique relationship to the Father which had shaped his own life of prayer.
In the more extensive Italian catechesis, Pope Benedict said that God asks us to have the same prayerful attitude.
Jesus allowed himself to be consigned into human hands, but it was into the hands of the Father that he placed his Spirit. Thus, as John the Evangelist says, all things were accomplished. The supreme act of love was carried to the end. Jesus' words on the cross in the final instance of his earthly existence provide binding guidelines for our own prayer, but they also open the way to serene trust and firm hope. By asking the Father to forgive those who are crucifying him, Jesus invites us to make the difficult gesture of praying for the people who do us wrong, who have damaged us, knowing how to forgive, so that the light of God may illuminate their hearts. In other words, he invites us to adopt, in our prayer, the same attitude of mercy and love which God shows towards us.
It is a lesson, he said, for all men.
From the cross, Jesus teaches us to forgive and love our enemies, to pray for their conversion, and to commend ourselves into the Father's hands, trusting that He will continue to sustain us amidst the sufferings of this life until they embrace us in heaven. I welcome the priests taking part in the Institute for Continuing Theological Education at the Pontifical North American College. My greeting also goes to the pilgrims from the Archdiocese of Toronto, as well as to the many diocesan, parish and school groups present at today's audience, especially the students of Our Lady's High School in Motherwell, Scotland. Upon also English-speaking pilgrims and visitors, including those from England, Ireland, Norway and the United States, I could invoke God's blessings. Thank you.